in theater, the actors have very strong voices. They're yelling almost like, to be or not to be. Like, it's really, really loud. This is something that commercial and corporate narration voice actors can really work on to stretch their repertoire of the types of reads that they are able to do. The projection of our voice is really, really important. But when I listen to beginners who come to me for coaching, it's almost like you're scared of your voice. And so we're just kind of stuck in just one or two different reads, the conversational read and maybe a smooth read, but they almost sound the same. This microphone is very strange because it can't fully tell you how much energy the voice actor is putting out. And so while you're in your booth, you may be screaming and pointing and yelling and whatever, but when you hear the audio, you're like, oh, it's not as loud as I thought it was, or it's not as crazy as I thought it was. And I just gave myself a thumbs up. That's pretty cool. I am going to show you what that can look like, all right, with my NBA stuff. If you guys don't know, I'm the voice of NBA on Fire. It's the weekly recap series for the international market. And I'm going to show you what I actually do when I am reading it for real. And then we'll watch the actual clip from the show that corresponds to what I just read, and you'll see that in context, it's not as wild as you think it is. In his sophomore season, he averaged 24.3 points, 11 rebounds, 3.7 assists, and 3.8 blocks, which was cut short due to injury. He used the offseason to find new ways to improve his already astonishing game. He spent time in China, training with the monks. He worked with NBA legends Hakeem Olajuwon and Kevin Garnett. He was doing everything to get better. Okay, so that section there is actually part of the cold open, the introduction to the actual gameplay. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say that's probably, to me, it feels like a 7 or an 8. But when you hear it in context, it's not that crazy. In his sophomore season, he averaged 24.3 points, 11 rebounds, 3.7 assists, and 3.8 blocks, which was cut short due to injury. He used the offseason to find new ways to improve his already astonishing game. He spent time in China, training with the monks. He worked with NBA legends Hakeem Olajuwon and Kevin Garnett. He was doing everything to get better. When I listen to the actual audio, it's like, that sounds so just, it's energy. It's energetic, but it doesn't sound like I feel, if that makes any sense. Let's do another section real quick, and then you'll get another understanding of like how animated I am in the booth when I'm doing this stuff. Then we'll listen to that section as well that I voiced, and then we'll close it up with some important tidbits that you need to keep in mind and why everything that I'm doing is relevant to making my reads sound the way they do. 2 days later, Spurs took on the Pelicans in New Orleans. Zion must have heard about Wemby's opening night because he went big on his first play. If Zion came to play, Wemby said, I bet, because when Zion tried to post up Wemby again a minute later, Wemby answered by doing this. That's 3 blocks in 1 minute. Woo! That is a lot of work. Yo, it is a lot of screaming. It feels like a lot of screaming when I'm doing it. 2 days later, the Spurs took on the Pelicans in New Orleans. Zion must have heard about Wemby's opening night because he went big on his first play. If Zion came to play, Wemby said, I bet. Because when Zion tried to post up Wemby again a minute later, Wemby answered with this.
Swatted by Wembanyama. Swatted again. 2 straight blocks against Zion.
Yo, that's 3 blocks in 1 minute. With all of the noise and sound effects and crowd noise and all of the stuff that's going on in those clips, I am fighting against all of that. My voice has to cut through all of that, which is why on these sports announcer spots, it requires that level of energy. This is no different than animation and video games when you're playing soldiers and you're doing barks and screaming, or characters, animation characters like all wacky and wild. You have to be loud. And it's not loud like screaming loud. I don't think you ever saw me do any of that in any of these spots. If I say, 2 days later, Spurs took on, that's totally different from 2 days later, Spurs took on the Pelicans in New Orleans. They're very different. So I'm not sitting here telling you to scream and then consequently hurt your voice. I'm telling you that you need to get comfortable at least once a day, pushing yourself to be loud, to project. And one of the ways to do that, if you're not familiar, is to use diaphragmatic support. And so if you don't know how to do that, and you're one of those people who breathe from up here and you're just like, and you're doing all the breathing like that, it's going to be hard to push. 2 days later, the Spurs took on the Pelicans in New Orleans. You'll be like, 2 days later, Spurs took on the Pelicans in New Orleans. But with diaphragmatic support, it becomes 2 days later, Spurs took on the Pelicans in New Orleans. and I can still keep going. Breath support is so important. And that's why I said with newer voice actors, and especially voice actors who may not be new, but only do commercial and corporate narration, there aren't many opportunities to push yourself like that. I can't remember the last corporate narration where I had to push like that. I don't think I've ever had to do that. But if I would have never tried to do it and learned to do it properly with proper support and be comfortable and not be afraid of my voice being that loud, I would never know that I can access that. I would be limited. My range would be so limited. You know what I'm saying? Y'all gotta have great voices. 2 days later, Spurs took on the Pelicans in New Orleans. Like, that's great. It's great to have that read. But I know that you got more in there. Promo, movie trailers, you gotta have it. Animation and video games, definitely gotta have it. You're doing any audiobooks, you gotta play characters, you gotta have it. Let me mention why I was doing all of this. So when I was like, 2 days later, Spurs took on the Pelicans in New Orleans. Zion must have heard about women, all of this stuff you'd see me do with my hands, it is with intention. You have to do it when you're telling a story. And this is relating directly to commercial. Even in something like corporate narration, you are conducting. You're a conductor. You're conducting your own story. Because when we talk normally, some people don't gesticulate as much as others. They maybe just talk like this. But I find it very rare that people just talk like this and don't move at all. I have to conduct myself through this. 2 days later, Spurs took on the Pelicans in New Orleans. Zion must have heard about Wemby's opening night because he went big. You know what I'm saying? He went big on his first play. And if Zion came to play, Wemby said, I bet. Because when Zion tried to post up Wemby again a minute later, Wemby answered with this. All of these things that I'm doing can be heard by this microphone. Not the actual movement, but the intention behind the words is amplified by the movement that's associated with it. You can hear a difference between me saying, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. There's a difference in the sound by the movements that we use or no movements. I hate you. Like, it just doesn't sound the same depending on what you're doing with your body, right? You shouldn't be scared of your voice, guys, until you explore that end of your range and know, one, how to reach it healthily and safely without damaging your voice. And two, okay, I can not only be loud. 2 days later, Spurs took on the Pelicans in New Orleans. Zion must have heard, I could say that, but I could also say, 2 days later, Spurs took on the Pelicans in New Orleans. Zion must have heard about Wemby's opening night because he went big on his first play. I would not know that I could hit those notes if I never tried. Take this and run with it. I want to see you guys pushing yourself to explore those ranges in your voice, because the more you can access that, the more dynamic you're going to become. Anyways, hopefully you found this helpful, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.